The Prime Minister has apologised this morning for leaving the D-Day commemorations early yesterday to attend a political interview.
Yes, this comes as he left the Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, in his stead, whilst Keir Starmer also remained in Normandy.
Let's talk to our political correspondent, Katherine Forster. What do you make of this, Katherine?
Yes, well, I think, to be honest, that this was inevitable, given the optics of what happened yesterday. So Rishi Sunak, very keen to stress that he went to many, many events, and indeed the British event yesterday morning in Normandy. But of course, it was the international event in the afternoon that he wasn't at. So we had these pictures going around the world of, Emmanuel Macron from France, Olaf Scholz from Germany, President Biden from the US, and where you would expect to see the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, Foreign Secretary David Cameron in his place. So in the last 15 minutes, the Prime Minister has issued an apology. I'll just read it out to you. He says, the 80th anniversary of D-Day has been a profound moment to honour the brave men and women who put their lives on the line to protect our values, our freedom and our democracy. This anniversary should be about those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. The last thing I want is for the commemorations to be overshadowed by politics. I care deeply about veterans and have been honoured to represent the UK at a number of events in Portsmouth and France over the last 2 days and to meet those who fought so bravely. After the conclusion of the British event in Normandy, I returned back to the UK. On reflection, it was a mistake not to stay in France longer, and I apologise. So an apology there, but I think clearly this has been a misstep. Now, he came back to do an interview with ITV, most of which won't air till next week, but a clip of which has run now, basically pushing back against the allegations that £2,000 tax hit from a Labour government that he spent so much of the debate the other day talking about was in fact not correct. He pushed back on that, saying, no, this was not a lie. I am right. That's obviously a very political story. So certainly a misstep, and especially in a campaign where he's been trying to say the world is more dangerous in a dangerous world. Stick with the Conservatives.
Katherine, it's an interesting apology because he doesn't try really to make any excuse for what happened. Do you think perhaps he just did not realise just how significant the day would be? Why do you think this decision was made? He seems to say, the British event had concluded and so I went home.
Yes, he did. And, ultimately, we don't know which advisor told him this was the right thing to do. But the buck stops ultimately, doesn't it, at the top. So I think there'll be plenty of people across the country and Conservative voters especially. These D-Day commemorations were a momentous day, and ultimately, no matter what advice the Prime Minister may or may not have been given, he's the boss. They refer to him, his team refer to him as the boss, and he is. So ultimately, it was his call. So I think it's positive that he's made the apology, but I do wonder whether that's going to cost him. The fact that he wasn't there, OK, he's apologised now, but the fact that he wasn't there yesterday afternoon is going to have cost him some more votes, and goodness knows they can ill afford to lose more votes because it appears that they are hemorrhaging votes all over the place at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, when we look at the latest figures for Reform in this polling, and I know it's difficult looking at the polling and how it's all extrapolated and all the rest of it, but nevertheless, I mean, talk about pressure from Labour, which we knew was there. The pressure from Reform seems to be growing throughout this campaign now.
Yes, I mean, the campaign got going, just over 2 weeks ago now. It was pretty much a nightmare for the Conservatives from the beginning, with the rain and some of the photos that were taken next to exit signs, etc. But this really is their absolute worst nightmare. not only are Labour projected to get, a 20-point lead in the polls at the moment and a huge majority, but now Reform that were already going to cost them seats, they are surging in the polls. They're within a couple of points of the Conservatives. It is possible that we may reach crossover where they actually overtake the Conservatives in the polls in the next few days. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that Reform are going to get lots of seats in Parliament. They may not get any. They probably might just get a couple. I think it's quite likely that Nigel Farage will win in Clacton. But the effect is that the Conservatives are going to lose a whole load of seats that they might ultimately otherwise have held on to, because although Reform is going to take votes from Labour too, no doubt about it, they will predominantly take votes from the Conservatives. And it goes back again to the decision by the Prime Minister, which took us all by surprise, to go holding the election now, because they always were worried about Nigel Farage coming back and the boost that would give Reform. And of course, if they'd held on to November, which is what we pretty much all expected, Nigel Farage has said that America and what's happening with Trump is so important. In fact, he briefly said that he was going to focus on that. If Rishi Sunak had gone in the autumn, Nigel Farage would likely have been tied up with the campaign in the state. So, this decision to go early is looking more and more ill-advised, to be honest, at the moment. But hey, the election is just under a month away. Things can change, but it's not looking good for the Conservatives.
That is true. Things can always change. Thank you very much indeed, Katherine Forster.